Bible School Radio, 91.3 KDKR Decatur, Dallas Fort Worth, and 91.3 KYJC Commerce.
Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, we have to cut the cards up, and I'm going to tell you why. Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. And I do have a line for you to call if you got a question and or a comment. The number to call is 1-877-913-5357. 1-877-913-5357. You can also go to the website, www.prudentmoney.com. A couple of things to do there. Make sure that you're signed up on the e-letter list. That way you get straight to your inbox anytime we post something on the site. And if you get a chance, there's times where you can't listen in real time to the radio show. We do podcast every program. And you can go to the section on the website, prudentmoney.com, or you can go wherever you listen to your podcast, your favorite podcast. Hopefully Prudent Money is one of them, and you can hear on whatever platform you use. We're on, I think, just about every one of them. So go check that out at prudentmoney.com. 1-877-913-5357. Well, I did have yesterday someone call me, a friend of mine, that said, hey, listen, you said you were going to talk about the downsides of debit cards and you never did. Or I couldn't find it listening to the podcast. Sometimes I talk about what I'm going to get to in a minute or two or 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, and I never get to it because I went down another road and talked about something else. Casualties of the job. So what I wanted to say about debit cards is simply this, is that, and it really comes down, there's two main reasons, maybe three main reasons why. But the first one, and the number one reason why I think it's better to use a credit card as long as you're paying it off, with the disclaimer that I have, using a credit card versus a debit card, simply because a debit card gives identity thieves a entry into your bank account, which is not a good thing, versus a credit card limit. And so I would rather, if someone was going to get a hold of my credit card, my wallet, or whatever, I would rather them charge things on a credit card where I can get that taken off immediately, versus a debit card where really if someone comes into your account and steals money could cause a lot of different problems. So that's the number one reason. The number two reason, even though your debit card may have a MasterCard or one of the major credit card, Visa or anything like that, symbol on it, does not mean that you're getting credit anywhere for the use of your transaction history is going to benefit your credit score. And that is something that people sometimes they get confused. I'm using my debit card, I'm making transactions, I'm affecting my credit score. You're not affecting your credit score at all. So you got to know that. And whereas with the credit card, once again, with the assumption that you're paying it off each month, a credit card works better because of the influence on your credit score if you're charging things, paying them off, charging things, paying off. Positive credit transaction history is what we're looking for. So there's a couple of reasons why. The third is that I think it's easier to track your finances and track your spending using a credit card versus a debit card. Now, let's say that you're just not very good at making sure that that credit card stays without any debt on it. And if that's the case, then I would use my debit card. I mean, you got to look at it. What's your strengths and weaknesses, and what makes sense for most people that can successfully use a credit card. I think that's the best way to go versus a debit card, and mainly from the standpoint of identity theft. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. 1-877-913-5357. That is the number to call, and I do have a line open if you'd like to call in. Another thing that I was talking about this week, and we've been talking about it a little bit more throughout the past 3 or 4 months, is the interest rates on money markets versus savings cards. I had a couple more questions come in wanting to know, be a little bit clear about what do you mean by savings account, because my savings account at my bank is paying hardly nothing versus a money market at, say, Fidelity or a Vanguard or maybe even a Charles Schwab. Just to give you as a benchmark, or first let me back up and say this. Savings account, a straight savings account that you find at a bank, or really anything that you find at a bank that is part of the bank, is probably not going to be paying very much in interest. This is a problem with the banks that the banks are having because they're in competition with money market accounts. A money market is, once again, what you're going to find at pretty much at an investment type company. So the banks are finding that money is just leaving their savings accounts where their customers have a ton of money just sitting, a lot of cash that's sitting out there, but it's making nothing at banks. And banks are also trying to do things like 7-month CDs for a 5% interest rate and make it look like you're getting a complete 12-month interest rate of 5%. They're doing everything they can to try and attempt to keep money in their banks. So they're using the tricks and marketing tricks of using CDs. But the reality of it is, and I'll give this to you as a benchmark, a and this is no recommendation or anything like that, just take it as information. A Fidelity money market is paying 4.78% on their 7-day yield right now. And of course that can change, and you got to know that those numbers can go up or down. Most of the time they stay pretty steady. This past 12 to 18 months they've been steadily increasing. And all that comes from the fact that the Federal Reserve Board is raising interest rates, which, by the way, for those of you who have benefited and thinking about benefiting from things like fixed annuities, which are paying 5.45%, is about the highest rate that I've seen on a highly rated annuity. You might want to think about going ahead and getting that taken care of and locked in, or consider it, because only from the standpoint, that's not advice to do that. It's just that the inflation numbers, second day in a row that have come out, have looked really good. And so that, even though I personally think that the inflation numbers are bogus, I think they're a lot worse than reported, but I'm not going to get into that. The Federal Reserve Board does follow that information. So it could be that the Fed decides to put an indefinite pause on raising rates, which would be very market friendly, be very bond market friendly, but it wouldn't be so good for interest rates if we start to see interest rates go down. So you got to keep that in mind. But savings rates at banks not paying much. Money markets at investment companies happen to be paying way more than, and it's not anything that you're not locking yourself into anything, or you can get your money and put it in, take it out. There's very liquid. Just so happens that we have a situation where the interest rates are high, which is good, which is a real good thing. 1-877-913-5357 is the number to call. So I've been talking also about interest rates on a very bad thing, which can be credit cards. And credit card accounts have been, our credit card companies have been in overdrive trying to get you to move money, balances from current credit cards to their credit cards. And I want to stress to be very careful with taking advantage of these marketing programs that credit cards are rolling out right now. Because what they're doing, and I'll get to the example that I'm going to make here in a second, but what they're doing is they're saying, okay, we're going to give you 21 months. And you look at that and think, boy, that's a long time. And it is a long time. 21 months at 0% interest. And then you get a credit interest rate based on your credit history. The best rate that you can get that I've seen is like 20%. Unbelievable. But the average credit card interest rate right now is, I think, 20 point something percent. I've seen it as high as 24%. These are analysts who come up with these numbers. But the bottom line is you've got to be very, very careful with credit cards. We'll get to the reason why here in just a second. 1-877-913-5357. This is Bob Brooks. Stick around. I'll be right back.
The Word for Today is excited to announce the new official online home for the ministry of Pastor Chuck Smith and K. Smith, pastorchuck.org. At pastorchuck.org, you'll have instant access to thousands of hours of verse-by-verse teaching by Pastor Chuck Smith from Genesis through Revelation, and full access to special messages on subjects such as prophecy and much, much more. Also at pastorchuck.org, a full library of great teachings by K. Smith, and a section where you can read some of Pastor Chuck's books online, all free of charge. So visit the new official online home of the Word for Today and the ministry of Pastor Chuck and K. Smith, pastorchuck.org.
I must commit myself to be faithful to the leaders God has set over me. Doesn't David teach us that? Saul gave him every reason to walk away, but David kept coming back to this truth. That's God's man.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series, The Tender Warrior, next time on Turning Point.
Weekday mornings at 9 o'clock here on KDKR.
Alistair Begg wraps up our study of God's providence this week by considering God's role in the crucifixion and in earthly tragedies. Then he begins a study in the book of Ephesians, showing how the Apostle Paul remained a pastor and evangelist even while in prison. That's this week on Truth for Life with Alistair Begg.
Weekdays at 5:30 a.m. here on 91.3 KDKR.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. 1-877-913-5357. Talking about credit card interest rates, the kind we don't want to see go up, but the average credit card interest rate, and we'll call it a range because I've gotten two different numbers in looking this up. The government says about 20 point something percent. Forbes analyst says 24%, which wouldn't surprise me. You know, they did a piece of legislation, a big piece of legislation, back and passed it before Obama became president, and he signed it into law in May of 2009. It was called the Card Act. And the Card Act was all about reforming the credit card industry. And I'm still trying to figure out where the credit card reform is, because all they've done is gone in and changed the terminology. It used to be a penalty rate, which they stopped saying the word penalty rate, was 29 or 30%. And they're handing 29% out at the for anybody who's got rough credit. You know, that's the thing about credit card rates, the penalty rates. You could really not, depending on, even if you have bad credit history, you can get credit. Just, are you willing to pay 45% for that credit? It's unbelievable. But I had someone send me an email that said, "Hey, I am paying 9% right now. I'm going to move my money to this Wells Fargo account. It's going to give me 21 days at 0%. And then by the time 21 days are over with, I'll have it paid off." So you got to remember, using the range from 20 to 29%. Some are 19 to 29%, but most you get the drift. 20 to 29%. And if something goes wrong and you cannot pay that money back, then you just went from 9.99% to 20-something% in your interest rate. And it'll be really tough to pay it back. So just be careful. I just think we've come to a spot where, most people use credit cards. There's a percentage that do just use it for points, use it as a spending device, which credit card companies don't really care for that business, because that's a good way to use credit cards. They want you to be in debt. Then there's people who just continually roll balances, which can work in your favor. But at the end of the day, I think that that exercise of rolling from 0 to 0% has gotten a little bit dicier, considering now that you could end up with an interest rate of 24-25%. Makes it kind of a different situation. So that's why I say it's time to cut up the cards. Now, when I say cut up the cards, that does not mean literally go cut up your cards. What you want to you certainly don't want to close down credit cards. So I don't want to leave that impression that that's a great idea, because that will hurt your credit score if you shut down credit cards. They have something called a credit utilization ratio, and every credit card that you close and remove that balance or remove that credit limit from the credit card reduces your credit utilization ratio. And then you get to a point increases your credit utilization ratio. My bad. And when you increase that credit utilization ratio, you decrease your credit score. So that's how that works. You never want to cut those up. But like I said, I think it's some of the things that we've used. You really got to determine what you're using a credit card for. If it is to carry debt to hopefully one day get paid off, I would advise to get that paid off as quickly as possible, whether that's 2 years, 3 years, whatever. It's interesting. You can have $15,000, $20,000 worth of debt on a credit card and say, well, in 4 or 5 years, I'm going to have this paid off. 4 or 5 years comes like in no time, and you still have that $25,000 worth of debt. So I think we got to get very, very intentional about getting out of credit card debt, because once these rates I haven't seen 30% yet as a introductory rate. As high as 30. Could see that, who knows. But stakes are high, average interest rates are about 20%. Time to say no more to credit cards. Keep the ones you've got, get them paid off, and use them for spending and paying off, and that is it. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Hey, if you haven't gone and checked out prudentmoney.com, go and do so. We have a lot of people who go to website on a daily basis and check out all the resources on the site. Make sure you're signed up for the Prudent Money e-letter list. We do send that out, and make sure you stay up and connected with what I'm putting out there. So that's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Unless you've been away from social media, internet, various things like that, you haven't maybe not have heard of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a big deal, starting to hit the stock market. They're starting to identify stocks that are AI stocks. And so it comes to the point of what will be the situation where AI, artificial intelligence, will replace people. And of course, just like that, in no time does it say that it's going to replace financial advisors. And here we go. This ad that came across about their artificial intelligence tells when to get in and out of stock with an 87% accuracy. 87% accuracy. It's that easy. It says, however, there are still some investors who don't understand what makes this software different and superior from anything else on the market. I'll just say blank, I'll call it blank, is truly a game changer. The business world as we know it is on a verge of a significant transformation as robots and AI start taking over all kinds of tasks that would typically require human intelligence. Now, here is the interesting thing about the word intelligence. And plain information, AI could definitely replace that. Where things are a judgment call, I'm still a little skeptical, and I'll get into that in a minute. It says the problem is there's just no proven, reliable, and constant software available to let retail traders compete with the machines. Blank's AI technology gives retail investors, that's like you and me, the small investor, a fighting chance. Since this software first started buy and sell signals, its predictions have been up to 87.4% accurate. And with machine learning, GPT-3 Foundation, and other AI protocols that allow for even deeper understanding of the markets, the more get this one, and they want you to believe this. Maybe it's true. I don't know. But call me skeptical. The more predictions it makes, the smarter it gets. I would suggest that one of the most important things that's figured out in an investment type situation is a person's risk level, how they feel about money, the things that go beyond intelligence, which require understanding values and the intricacies of what's important and what's not important, and what we're willing to take risk on and what risk means. I just don't think we're going to get to a point, could be wrong, that a computer can actually do all of that. And especially all the intricacies of investing that make up the investing process. Maybe I'm wrong. Always happy to admit that I am. But I just wonder at what point do people want to deal with a computer versus a real person that goes through the aspects and the emotional aspects of investing, and plus the meanings and interpretations of words. And that's always is interesting when you get into a conversation with somebody about a particular investment and start talking about words that have multiple definitions and multiple interpretations. What's the one that, and rarely do people take the time to sit down and break that down and talk about it. I think you get my point. Just be careful when you see that type of advertising and spending your hard-earned money on some of those promises. We'll see how that turns out. This is Bob Brooks. Hey, if you haven't gone to the website, go check it out, prudentmoney.com. Sign up for the Prudent Money e-letter. And if you miss any part of a program, you can always listen to the podcast on whatever platform that you like the best. If you have a question for me, please go to the website and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time. Keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.